Hi, my name's Dr Carol Azumah Dennis. I'm here talking to Gill Clifton, who is a staff tutor at the Open University. Gill, you completed your MA a few years ago now. Can you tell us what the experience was like?
Yes, I found it very rewarding, most certainly, but also extremely challenging. That move from studying undergraduate level into master's level is a jump, and I know now as a tutor myself can be very challenging for students, as it was for me. There is greater expectation in terms of your ability to write and structure arguments, and also to critically evaluate the information that you're being presented with, and also to take more autonomy in your own learning as well. So all those three things together does make it extremely challenging.
So what motivated you to take the MA?
I wanted to get into teaching in higher education. So a natural progression for that career move was to take up a master's qualification. So that was the original motivation. But also as an undergraduate student, I had had some insight into studying a little bit of research, and that was an area I especially wanted to know more of and to learn more about. And I knew that at master's level, that very much is part of what you're studying.
Most of the students who do the MA are already fairly well-established professionals, and many have a good career behind them. What's there to gain from doing an MA?
Certainly from a personal perspective, there were lots of gains, and I think the biggest one is a sense of confidence in your ability to structure an argument, to look at information in a more critical way. And as I mentioned before, I was particularly interested in research. So that idea of linking theory to your practice, to what I'm actually doing in a teaching capacity, I think has been a big learning curve for me, and something that I've gained, which I would not have achieved had I not taken a master's qualification.
I know you didn't stop being a student once you completed your MA. What did you do next?
I had a real interest in this concept of critical thinking, and how for some that can be a barrier to higher education. So there seemed a natural, organic progression for me to actually go on and study that in a much larger way, and go for the doctorate, go for the EdD.
We're now going to hear from Hilary, who's a former MA student who now supervises doctoral students. Hilary's going to tell us about her experiences of doing the MA.
So I'm Lindsay, and in 2009 I completed my MA in Education with the Open University. What was most interesting for me was that suddenly I was involved in social sciences, whereas before I had qualified as an accountant and I'd done an MBA, so I was very left-brained, and I came along to do my MA, and that was a very right-brained experience where I learnt so many different things. I did my MA in Education because there was an issue that had come up that I wanted to explore. So I'm a chartered accountant, and the global body for chartered accountants had introduced a new scheme that meant that for your CPD, for your continuing professional development, you could actually bring into play all the informal learning you had done, as well as the formal learning, such as going on courses. So my research was into what do we mean by informal learning, and is the new scheme working? What I found really helpful about the environment was the fact that you were able to access resources online, study when you had the time, so when you got a big chunk of time you could get on with it, you didn't have to fit in with a very rigorous programme. But along the way, because you were sending in assignments, you were getting feedback, and so you knew that you were making the progress that you needed to make. So it was all about making a plan at the beginning to try and work out how do I keep up with the timetable. But as long as I did, then it all worked extremely well. The difference that doing the MA made to me personally was that it it meant I'd found out about something that nobody else had. And I felt I'd got a robust understanding of the topic, so I was then able to use that to lobby for changes within the accountancy profession. I think one of the big benefits I only realised with hindsight, in that it was the first step to my becoming an academic. And since then I have actually been the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and I was the second woman in 140 years, but the first academic. So for me, that qualification was a fantastic stepping stone. When I started my MA, I hadn't had any experience of doing research, so I didn't really know what research was all about. And so that MA experience, where you'd got to study the literature, you'd got to develop your writing skills, you've got to work out how you could put across what you wanted to put across in a very low number of words. That was all absolutely invaluable, and in fact was a fantastic stepping stone to me continuing with my research afterwards. So after I'd completed my MA, I'd discovered as part of the process that there were lots more things that I needed to find out about. So I went on to do my doctorate in education. So instead of just looking at informal learning, which I'd begun by exploring, I moved on to look at just what do we mean by continuing professional development, what do we mean by lifelong learning for accountants and indeed for anybody today.
That was really interesting, Hilary and Gill. Thank you for joining us.
Great pleasure.
Goodbye for now.